Belize, like the rest of the region, is facing escalating environmental challenges, and it's difficult for these developing countries to respond and to access funds.
During the conferences of the United Nations Framework on Climate Change, the developing countries kept advocating that we need a fund that would be better suited to the developing world. And out of that came the Green Climate Fund, with the idea that the Green Climate Fund would be accessible much more easily than the GCF.
The Green Climate Fund is a $10.3 billion platform. These funds are to be invested in low-emission and climate-resilient development projects. Belize has direct access to that fund. The way the country accesses these funds is by way of a national accredited entity. The Caribbean Community Climate Change Center is one of the first regional accredited entities. This means that the GCF has approved the 5 Cs to implement projects from $10 million up to $50 million.
That was quite an achievement, because up to that point in time, it was the big institutions like the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, Deutsche Bank, and so on, that were approved.
The Protected Areas Conservation Trust is another entity that is accredited by the GCF. So, how does this all work in Belize? The GCF works directly with Belize through its national designated authority.
The objective of the NDA system is to ensure that whatever proposals, whatever projects, whatever discussions are held, with the objective of trying to access green climate funds, GCF funding, the NDA ensures that the objectives of those discussions meet with both the GCA's objectives and also meet with the objectives of the country's national development, right?
And those projects must be in line with Belize's development priorities. So they must promote economic stability, sustainable socio-economic development, as well as reduce poverty. To prepare Belize to engage with GCF, the NDA is carrying out the Readiness program.
The toolkit sets out all of the procedures of the Green Climate Fund. GCF has various procedures for access to funding. One of the areas of focus of GCF is the whole matter of what you just mentioned, readiness, preparing institutions to be able to access, preparing institutions to be able to become accredited entities, which would then mean that the accredited entity would be the recipient of certain funding to be passed on to potential beneficiaries.
The GCF is already supporting research for an energy-focused project in Belize. This innovative and green initiative is seeking to increase Belize's energy sources by using a wild grass that grows in Belize. These tall stalks are known as the arundodonax, but they are commonly called wild cane.
One component of the project is actually to do a compatibility test, which means we harvest the plant from its natural size, we prepare it to the requirement of the sugar company, which is to shred and dry it, and then they put it in the furnace to see if it will support combustion. That test has been completed, and the preliminary results indicate that yes, it does work. We have a mixture, Belize that is, has a mixture of energy sources, which uses a large proportion of imported energy from Mexico. If we can depend on native renewable sources more, we can actually reduce that import.
In the agriculture sector, the Belize Sugar Industries Limited is looking to build the adaptive capacity of small-scale sugarcane farmers. So they are seeking funding from the GCF to equip farmers to respond to climate change.
What that is really to climate-proof the crops that they are producing, or the crop. In this case, it is sugarcane. The sugar industry here in Belize is really reliant on one variety in particular. 60% of our industry is planted with one variety, which is the B79. It is very high risk for any industry, any commodity industry or any agriculture industry to rely on one variety. It can be susceptible to pests, to disease, to flood, to droughts. So we're looking at all the varieties that we are able to get to be able to pass that over to farmers.
While the B79 variety has high sucrose content and grows well in Belize, for the past 30 years, the BSI has been doing research to diversify the varieties of sugarcane in the country.
After research, we've produced small amounts of them. Now we need to expand it, and we need to get this expanded amount to farmers in a very economically feasible manner.
NDA will be increasing its support to its partners as well as strengthening its engagement with the private sector to see even more entities accredited to access GCF funds.
One of them is to provide support to PAC as the Belize first national accredited entity. The other one is to provide support to the private sector and to develop a national adaptation plan. The GCF has a private sector facility where entities can access funds. So our main objective of the NDA is to have the Development Finance Corporation as an accredited entity who will then seek loans and grants or blending from the GCF to assist the private sector in Belize.
GCF is sometimes referred to as a disruptive financing mechanism because it seeks to provide funding in a non-traditional manner. It does help in the whole area of climate resilience, both from the mitigation and the adaptation points of view. As a very vulnerable country, it can help us to mitigate some of the climate-related challenges that we face. And it can also help us to adapt certain mechanisms to the climate-related changes that we face.